Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today I have the pleasure of Siya Twani on the show. Good morning to you, Siya.
Good morning, Julian. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, good to speak to you. You are a mental toughness and resilience speaker. And just some sort of background, you were tortured in prison for taking a stand against injustice in South Africa. And the great thing about this, you survived that and you're here to tell a story about how you harnessed a mindset where you embraced it and defied it and obviously conquered it. And we're going to get into that. And I suppose, Siya, for me, it'd be good just for the audience to get some context of how you got into a place where you were, tortured and imprisoned in South Africa.
As black people and as a person, I we were subjected to unfair treatment because of the apartheid, and therefore I dedicated my life to fight for justice for all and freedom for all, and that landed me in prison for 4 years in Robben Island. So I was prepared. I was prepared to suffer, to sacrifice for the struggle and for the liberation of myself and my people.
And just go into a bit more detail of that. I mean, I appreciate, in South Africa, the apartheid and the sort of segregation and the sort of very effectively racist and against black people and the difficulties you face. And obviously, we're aware of obviously Nelson Mandela, who was in Robben Island as well. Um, how did that sort of come about, and what was it that you decided to make that stand? Because not everybody makes that stand. Not everybody puts themselves above the parapet and pushes things through. And knowing the consequences which you obviously faced, torture and being in prison. So, what was it about that made a difference that you decided to make a stand against it?
Apartheid made sure that just like the British Empire rule and divide, it divided parents and the children. So we as children refuse, as young people and children, we refuse to accept the status quo, that we are second class citizen, we are invisible, we are non-entities. We refuse. So in 1976, black majority young people went on the street to say, away with apartheid. We're not going to accept that we are second class citizens. We are not going to accept that we are defaced. We have no voice, no choice, no freedom, etc., 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 and no human rights. So that was the rebellion against our parents who accepted the status quo, the rebellion against oppression from the oppressive regime apartheid.
And why did you decide to make a stand? Because I presume not everybody made a stand like you did that caused you to have such consequences.
It was my inner belief that I am not created. The American says that God does not make junk. So I was not a second class citizen. I was not rubbish. So it was the self confidence, self belief, yeah, that enabled me to push against those unhealthy, oppressive system. It was self confidence, self belief. It was self assurance that I am a different person. I want to make a difference in this world. Even at the age, a young age, as young as I can remember. I'm not sure I told you in the last conversation. For example, I was a clergyman, and all the pictures of Jesus were white. And so when I asked the question, why is God white? Why is Jesus and the angels white? My father was a bishop, says, oh, stop asking too many questions. In heaven, it doesn't matter. In heaven, you'll all be the same. And so that for me, that was imbalance, that was injustice. How can this God who's white identify with my struggle for oppression? So I
Mm.
started. I'm a clergyman as well. I started my theological training not at university or college. It started in my home, in my township.
Mm.
It started with the color of my skin. If God is fair, is righteous, is just, why did He make me the color black? And why did He make white people with a lighter skin and they think that they're superior? So
Mm.
that's what drove my struggle towards justice.
I mean, that's incredible, really. And I obviously, being a white person, I've never faced what you faced and what you face probably even now, even in the UK. How does that? So I can imagine that it's quite tough and quite tough on the mind in terms of how you deal with your confidence, how you walk into a situation. Are you wary about scenarios? And I'd just like to understand how you deal with that, not just when apartheid was in South Africa, but even now. How does that have a bearing and a weight on your own inner self-confidence, and how have you sort of developed strategies to overcome that?
Okay, two things. One, I hear people in Britain and across the world saying to us who still experience racism as black people, Asian people, brown people, I'm sick and tired of people going on about racism. They say it in Britain. Yeah, I experience that in professional settings. Uh,
Mm,
so I'm sick and tired of people going on racism. And my reply to that is, those of us who experience it daily, we are sick and tired of experiencing it.
mm,
Hmm. So that's one. So it's my inner belief that I'm not here on this planet Earth. That's one of my strategies to explain myself or to apologize for being on this planet Earth, whether it be in
mm.
Britain, America, Russia, or under the water. That's one of my strategies. I don't own anybody explanation as to my humanity. I'm here. I'm present. If you like me,
Mm.
great. If you don't like me, great.
Fantastic. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. That's it's just who you
Yeah.
are and accept who
Yeah.
you are, and regardless of
Absolutely.
your color of your skin.
Exactly. But the other one, I just need to say, people who still subject people of different races to injustice and racism, either in Britain or South Africa, anywhere else, they don't realize the racial trauma and
Mm,
the impact it has on our mental health.
mm,
We talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. You go to war, you go into Iraq, you go to where, you go to Ukraine, you come back, oh, they're traumatized. Those of us who live with extreme exposure to racism, with this
mm.
unconscious bias, yeah, we still live with the trauma. They don't realize the impact of that racial trauma.
I never realised it in that way, calling it a trauma, but I guess it is, isn't it? Because yeah,
It
certainly,
is.
certainly on a day by day.
Yeah.
So you know, if you're dealing with that and it is as a trauma, how have you sort of worked that through? How have you got to a place where you are now, where you've got this mental toughness, that you are full of joy, full of life? Because I know you are. How
Yes,
have
I
you got
am.
to that place? Because you're not making it up, you're not faking it.
No.
There's a genuineness. How have you got to that place of dealing with that trauma? Because people might be listening right now who have got racial trauma, but also they might have other
Yeah.
traumas, as you said. So how
Yeah.
have you dealt with that trauma?
I think from a therapeutic point of view, I one for me, it started with self acceptance. Yeah, that I love myself. Yeah, uh, that for me is key. I'm gonna say this, and I'm not being arrogant. I say this wherever I go. I own my space, Julian. I go and deliver training. I go and deliver motivational speaking. I go to settings. I own it. Yeah, I don't apologize. I walk tall like Nelson Mandela. I walk tall like Obama. I own my space. So that confidence that I have of being self assured, I don't allow people to reduce me to nothingness. Yeah,
Mm,
that's how I deal with it. I don't. Yeah, like you said, and rightly so. I conquer it. Yeah, I conquer those negative mindset. I don't allow them to sit in my head. I don't allow people to have rent-free space, whether it's racism, prejudice, belittling, inhumane. I don't allow that. Yeah. So it's
fantastic.
self-confidence, it's self-belief. Yeah. It's being self-assured. It's not being arrogant. Sometimes I hear people say, "Oh, you've got a chip on your shoulder," and I'm thinking, "Wow, if you're a black person who's articulate, confident, comfortable in your own skin, the rhetoric is always, oh, got a chip on your shoulder." But they never say that about the white person who just stands up there and be confident.
Yeah, it's that, as you say, that unconscious bias that
Yeah.
puts a negative spin
Spin. Yeah. Yeah.
on race, and that's an
Yeah.
unfortunate, as you
Yeah.
say, turning something that's quite positive into a negative immediately.
yeah, yeah.
So so you've got this self confidence and you own your space, and I love that. I love the fact that you have that sort of that inner confidence.
Yeah.
What has got you to that place? I mean, perhaps take us back to when you were imprisoned those many years ago, and how you dealt with that, being in prison, being tortured. What were the things that were going through your mind? How did you deal with that transformation, and how that lead you to this place now where you literally own your own space?
Before we talk about prison, let's talk about the psychology of apartheid, because it was a deliberate, it was not a mistake like de Klerk says, it was a deliberate ideology to dehumanize. So we were called names like Kefir, nigger, I'm going to say it, yeah, which meant that you are actually a non-entity. So we had to address white people as boss, yeah. My mother, I'm talking about the context, yeah, of how I
Mm.
overcame that. My mother, who was old enough to be a parent to some of the white people, she was employed to work as a cleaner. She called them madam because you couldn't call a white person the first name. My father referred to the white employers as boss. Yeah, I remember you asked me the question, how did I get to that? At age 10, my father was delivering newspapers and we were going up and down the road. And mother happened to forget to put the newspaper in one of the flats in Cape Town. This white boy, who was same age as me, ran behind us and called my father, "You Kefa boy." My father is my father. My father is my God. Yeah?
Mm.
How dare you call my father? I did a Muhammad Ali on him. Boom! I punched him and he went over the floor. Guess what? My father picked me up and he beat the hell out of me. Do you know why he beat me? We're going to come back to prison. Do you know why he beat me? Because he was scared of the consequences of beating the princess, a white person.
Mm.
I was defending the honor of my father from being called a boy. In my culture, I couldn't even address my father as a boy. He's my king, he's my God.
Mm.
So let's fast forward. Let's fast forward. Prison. So those are the things I had to deal with. My parents being dehumanized, yeah, and reduced to nothingness. Me being reduced to nothingness. In prison, I was subjected to eating food, porridge that had dog hair and dog saliva and poo.
Mm.
That's inhumane.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Careful, stop moaning. I refused. I was on a hunger strike for 3 weeks in prison. I refused to eat. I survived those 3 weeks because of the inner resilience that I have, because of the inner mental toughness I have. I refuse. Yeah, I wouldn't eat that food. Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah,
That's that. I mean I mean, I can't. I say I can't imagine how your background and your, as you say, your context. It's well, to me, it just sounds awful. Sounds horrendous, and I'm sure it was. And I can't understand why. Well, I can understand why, but it's not right. But what I'd like to just understand more is how then, with against all odds, effectively, with an ideology that's so belittling and dehumanized, as you say, of
yeah,
black people, how you've risen, and the fact that you were only dehumanized in the sense in society, that you were then put into prison, which is even worse, and
yeah.
how what was it, where has this come from, this mental toughness? What things have you enabled you to be tough and to navigate things? And the reason I'm asking that is because other people might be facing, perhaps not as extreme as you, but they might be
Good
facing a
question.
tough
Yeah,
situation right now, a
yeah,
challenge in their business, in their organization, or in their personal life.
yeah.
What are the helpful strategies that you found through your life that have enabled you to overcome and defeat those odds and be a conqueror?
Okay, one of them, thanks, that's a very good question. One of them is a realization that victimhood is a choice. For some people, not always. Yeah? And I say to people when I do my speaking, I'm not a victim of apartheid, I'm a victor. So life can dish out stuff. It's how I respond to it. It's my response. It's my mindset. It's my approach to that which happened to me. Uh, there's some things that have happened to me that I refuse for them to define me. Yeah. So I'm not a victim. I refuse to. It's again. It's that mindset thing. I rebranded, reshaped my story of being at the receiving end from the perpetrator to me as a victim. I'm not a victim. I'm a victor. So the next one is the thing that Viktor Frankl meant search for meaning in his book. Yeah, it talks about, and then another person wrote a very powerful book. It's called The Choice. I think in life you've got choices to redefine our stories. Viktor Frankl says that it's not what happens to us, it's how we interpret that. That gives us inner strength, inner resilience to rewrite our story, to change our story, and not to be stuck in that story of self pity and victimhood. Yes, apartheid was evil. Yes, it was demonic. Yes, it was destructive. But how do I change that story? Yeah, I change my story because I refuse to let the white people have the last word on my life. I refuse.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it is that understanding of the stories we write in our heads, isn't it? It's those
Yeah.
narratives that we create. It's those, and obviously when you've been a story been written about you or told about you, or
Yeah.
people have told you you're stupid, you're an idiot, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's, as you say, it's having that choice of saying, actually, I'm refusing to accept that. I'm
Yeah.
going to write my own story. And I think
Yeah.
people don't realize. I was talking to somebody this morning. I was at a networking function where the narratives we put into our heads, good, bad, whatever it is, negative, positive, we will outwork those because you're
Of course.
effectively putting like a tape in your head of
Yeah.
how your story is. And so, how do you do that on a daily basis? What do you do? Is there any sort
I
of mantras or any sort of ways that, because I'm sure there's days when it's pretty tough and days when it's not so tough, and
yeah.
how do you sort of keep that daily sort of narrative that's positive and making sure that you are a victor in all that you do?
One, I pray. Two, I do daily affirmations. I go to the gym. At the gym, I fight with the weights. Yeah. Sometimes I make a choice to be inside the gym. I don't always feel like going to the gym. I
Mm,
make a choice to go into my mental inside the gym. I don't feel like saying I'm going to have a great day. It could be a very bad day outside. I could have financial struggles. I could have health issues. Yeah. I just lost my sister the other day. Yeah. Of course, I felt the grief and the loss and the pain.
mm,
Of course I did. But I said she has been given 54 years. Yeah. In those 54 years, she was able to achieve. So I changed that narrative. Yeah. I'm not
mm,
saying I dismiss the sadness. No, I didn't deny that she's no longer with us. But I reframe that story. So I pray. I go to the gym. I challenge myself. I do a lot of self talk. I change that narrative. I do a lot of affirmations. I write my cards every day. There. Yeah. I have cards that's all right. There we go. Yeah. I write things on my card. Yeah. And I write things on my board. I'm not sure if they can see that, Julian. There. I
oh yeah.
write things on my board. There. Every day. Yeah. I'm thriving. I'm prosperous. I'm fulfilled. I'm God favored. I'm grateful. I'm in a season of predictable uh, income and overflow. Even if there's no money in the bank, I change that narrative because if I wallow in self pity, I'm going to go down the spiral of depression. So I want to elevate my
Mm.
emotional energy and my mental health.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your sister passing away recently. That I saying, and it's great that you. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be sad and mourn, isn't it? That's it. That's
Yeah,
okay. And it's, I say, I think it's when people see positivity as in, be positive in all situation, that like almost like la la land, and that's not real, because for me it's
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
being grounded in reality of life, but also
Uh-huh.
having this perspective of optimism.
Yeah.
Do you see that as in the sort of the affirmations that you're putting down, what you write down, and what you read? Is that you sort of do you see that as like sort of manifesting type of thing, or how would you sort of perceive that? What would be your? Have you got a story where you've done this and some things have happened that you've because of how you've been operating,
Of
how you've been
course,
putting
of
those
course,
narratives?
of course. The good book says life and death is in the power of of the tongue. So what I put out there, yeah, will happen. If I believe that I am rubbish, guess what? My life is going to be rubbish, yeah. But
Mm,
if I believe that I'm a conqueror, that I'm thriving, yeah. The other day, I had 35 pounds in my account, and I says, money flows into my bank account from all different directions. 2 hours later, somebody rang me to say, Sia, could you come and do this piece of work? We'll pay this amount of money. It worked. It worked
fantastic.
because I put it out there and I believe that it's going to happen, and it did happen. If it doesn't happen immediately, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It means that I've got to keep on persevering. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think this power of positive thinking sometimes can be misconstrued.
Mm,
I'm not. I love Tony Robbins to bits. I really do. I've been to many of his meetings. I'm not like Tony Robbins. I'm not putting him down. He's one of my mentors. But we can't always be on top form. Life sometimes, you've got to persevere with the things that you
mm.
don't see happening, and then you see the manifestation.
Yeah,
The other one,
and
the other one, really in a second. I
go
moved into this place here. I said, I put this out of my head. I'm going to move into a cottage with the green door, a 2 bedroom, and guess what? I'm there. I'm in my
fantastic.
2 bedroom, yeah, green door, and I painted out in my picture what I wanted to see in the cottage is exact. I said to the landlord, I cried actually in the kitchen. So wow, this thing works. This is what works. My affirmations.
Yeah, no, and I think, as you say, it's not all woo woo, and it's not all being positive. Because if you're setting some positive mindsets or some positive expectations, there's a psychological thing going on. You've got a thing in your brain that will look for those ways of completing that narrative and look for
Exactly.
those opportunities. And I talk a lot about with organizations where we all have challenges, and rather than just looking at a challenge for the sake of challenge and how do we work out a solution, why don't you just turn, and it sounds very cliche, turn that challenge into asking a question of what are the opportunities this challenge gives me now. And it just
Exactly.
makes you think differently, and it creates a mindset that starts to see things you've never seen before. And I think
Absolutely.
it's having this, and for me with all this, it's all about, you talk about daily affirmation. It's consistency of building that narrative that's positive, that's more, building a life that's what you want to achieve and
Yeah.
create. And actually you'll start to create it because you start to walk into it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I agree. I think sometimes we have this thing that again, it's a victim mindset. I'm not saying everybody's a victim. I'm not suggesting that. But we allow things to happen to us instead of allowing things to happen for us. So we sit and be passive. Instead of saying, like you're saying, let's reframe that. What can I learn from this experience? And that's one of the things that kept me going during apartheid, during my growing up, during my divorce. Yeah, that's one of the things that kept me going. Yeah, it was how can
Mm.
I learn from this? How is this going to allow me to be a better person, leader, team player, father? Yeah, even though my family is now fractured, how do I do that?
Yeah, and it's looking for those sort of opportunities, isn't it? And I think it's, you know, having that daily thing. Is there any sort of, I suppose, one lesson or insights that from your story, from your background, that listeners could take away if they're say finding some difficulties now, that perhaps when you're in prison, perhaps when you're facing that apartheid in South Africa, that actually you did this, or awareness that created something that made you who you are today?
I'm going to quote Les Brown. He says, "Adversities introduces a man or a woman to himself." One of the things, whether it be apartheid, whether it be my home, my culture, my schooling, my education, my leadership, my church, my business, I've learned that the importance of self-awareness. Number two, I've learned the importance of self-care. Number three, I've learned the importance of self-compassion. Number four, I've learned the importance of self-empathy and taking things at my own space, my own pace, sorry, at my own. I've learned those, yeah. When my marriage fell apart, I was suicidal. I was thinking of committing suicide, but I said to myself, because I can be extremely overcritical of myself, Julian, and I had to learn to self-soothe. I remember going to my counselor, and I was really angry with her. She said, "Siya, just give yourself a massive hug." I said, "Don't be stupid now. Don't you be silly." Yeah. She says, "Do it. You're so quick at giving as a counselor, as a minister, as a
Mm,
coach, as a speaker. You embrace other people's pain. Why don't you give yourself a massive hug?" Self compassion. Through
mm,
all this, I've learned that I am a human being. I love human beings. I respect humanity. Um, Through love and understanding, we can make this world a better place. So I've learned self compassion, self kindness, self empathy. And lastly, I've learned for me in my journey, in my story, uh, never to take no for an answer. That's it.
yeah, you talked about self-compassion there, and I think that's one area where I think as generally as humans, we're very hard on ourselves,
Great.
and we have this weird high standard and expectations of what we should be doing and everything else, and we're quite tough on ourselves. And I often say to the leaders I'm coaching, almost like those things that are tough. How would you respond if that was somebody else going through that scenario? How would that?
Exactly.
How would? And the words would be very different. They'd be more kinder, positive, affirming. And I say, well, start thinking about that for yourself as well, because I
Yourself.
think
Yeah.
we need to be a lot kinder on ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, how does that manifest for you on a daily basis? That sort of being sort of self-care, self-compassion, and being sort of that selfness in a sense.
So I go to the gym. That's my me time. I have days where I go and, for example, I went to see a pedophile in prison the other day. I was full of anger. I could have murdered him. I said, no, let's go straight to the gym, park that there. So I meditate, I read, I go cycling. I do a lot of, I just take myself for a meal by myself, buy myself
Mm,
some roses. I do. I buy myself some roses. I remember going to a place, a restaurant in town. She says, "Excuse me, Sam. Oh, you've been sitting for a long time. Are you expecting somebody to join you?" I says, "No, I'm expecting me to join me." She says, "You're mad." I says, "No, I'm not. I'm doing self care, self love." Yeah.
mm,
Julian, we say this I'm going to jump on a plane next week to South Africa. The cabin will say, in case of emergency, the mask will drop from the floor. Put it where first? On your next door neighbor, your mother in
mm,
law, your girlfriend? No.
mm.
On who? On me. So when I choose to do self love, self care, self appreciation with my affirmations, I'm saying I'm the most important person. I'm going to put that mask so that I can then reach out to our business partners, to my children, to my colleagues, etc., etc.
Mm. Yeah, we can't look after other people unless we look after ourselves first, and I think
Absolutely.
that's really important. I actually told a client the other day to be more selfish, and which
Excellent.
sort of jarred with her initially, and she got a bit shocked by that. And obviously, I unpacked what I meant by that, because I think
Yeah.
she felt she always had to look after other people, sort other people's problems out, which
No.
she's quite good at fixing. But actually, sort yourself out first, otherwise you'll end up in a place of potentially burnout or certainly
Yeah.
having a certain stress. And I think people need to recognise that. And certainly, this obviously, we're in a time of year where it gets quite sort of squashed of our time and energy and
Yeah.
everything else. It's been great talking to you, Siya, and I really appreciate your openness and your frankness about your story and the wisdom and strategies that have come out of that for you to be not a victim but a victor, and somebody who conquers, and just this on a daily basis. And I really thank that, and hopefully people are quite inspired and have gone away with a number of strategies to really help them. If people want to connect with you and get in touch with you, what's the best way of doing that?
And my website is www.siya, SIYATWANI.com. All my details will be on my website, my number, my emails, etc., etc. Thank you for the opportunity to share life with you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you,
And
Siya. Appreciate
to the
that.
audience. Thank you.